Stephen.
Stephen?
Hi there, guys. It's Stephen from Glasgow in Scotland.
From where?
From
Glasgow.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Earlier you were talking about that ghost story and the kind of cognitive foibles of the mind and stuff like that. And I was just reading a book called On Being Certain by Robert A. Burton, who's a neurologist. And in it he talks about the Challenger study. Do you guys remember when the Challenger exploded?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, he basically did a study one day after the event. And his name is Ulrich Neisser. He's a psychologist, and he studies flashbulb memories, which are involved in the recall of highly dramatic events.
Okay.
And he basically asked his class of 106 students to write down exactly how they'd heard of the explosion and where they were, and what they were doing and how they felt at the time.
Wow.
And two and a half years later, they were again interviewed, and 25% of the students' subsequent accounts were totally different from their original journal entries.
Wow.
More than half of the people had lesser degrees of error, and less than 10% had all the details correct. Prior to seeing the original journals, most students presumed that their memories were correct. And even some of the students, when they were looking at their original journals, were like, that's my handwriting, but that's not what happened.
That's interesting.
Just total cognitive dissonance. They just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Well, one of the consequences of cognitive dissonance is that you tend to fill in more details and feel more strongly about it in order to sort of get rid of the nagging feeling that you're not quite sure anymore.
Well, I didn't want to overwhelm the discussion, but one of the things I was thinking of bringing in that I didn't was eyewitness research.
Yeah.
And what you're describing is very similar to a common law school research that they do. It's kind of like an informal thing that's done in law school classrooms to teach the students about eyewitness testimony, where they have like some event occur that's like a traumatic event in the classroom, where like somebody will come in and assault the professor or steal his briefcase, and then they run out of the room, and the students have to describe what they saw, and all the students will give different descriptions of the person who came in and did the deed. They give, like whether he was wearing a jacket, whether he had no sleeves, whether he had facial hair or was wearing a hat, and they totally conflict. And it's interesting.
Memories are just not reliable.
Correct. It's people just aren't equipped to. We're not video recorders. It's not how the brain works.
The author also gives his own anecdotal experience. He says he was at I think it's some kind of medical convention, and they're all talking about where they were when I think JFK was assassinated or some other kind of famous event.
Yeah.
And all of them disagree. But they all know how the brain works, but they all still disagree with each other, and they just don't accept that they can be wrong.
Right. That's the weird thing, is the insistence on how certain they feel about it, even though they're wrong.
I may be wrong about this, but I think I've also read somewhere that like the number of people who say they were at the JFK assassination is so huge that there would have been millions of people there if they were all right.
You make me feel kind of bad, because I was about to say earlier, I actually saw the Challenger explode live.
Really?
I was standing on the porch in Orlando.
Are you sure?
Yeah, now I'm wondering, did I really see it?
Yeah, you're not sure.
Yeah, maybe not. But
I have my own experience. For instance, I remember that a driving trip I went on when I was really, really young. And when I was telling it to my parents, they said to me, actually, no, you didn't go on that trip. It was your brother. And I had just remembered it as if I had went, but it was just, he told me he went, and I just had remembered it as that I had went on the trip.
So you put it together from stories.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and I think that happens especially at really young ages, where children get confused about what really happened.
Yeah, well, as a computer guy, I would guess that more distant memories that get archived have to get compressed in some way. And there is lossy compression, where when you unzip a file, it actually comes out different from the original. And the more stuff you have to store in the back of your brain, I've got an actual biopsychology student here, and so I'm afraid of making an idiot of myself. So never mind.
But yeah, I find that it's interesting when you have siblings, because the recollections that you have are challenged sometimes. Like, you'll say, do you remember such and such? And sometimes it's very validating to hear them say, oh yeah, I remember that. And then you'll say something else and they'll say, no, that's not what happened. And then it really calls it into question, because you thought you remembered, but it just takes like one or two things to make you start wondering if you're recalling it correctly. At least for me it does. I've never really understood that extreme certainty. I think that some people have, because I'm not that good with, faces and names and things. And if I were to witness something, I would be extremely scared to identify, for example, an assailant that I had never seen before, someone I didn't know. I would be so afraid of picking the wrong person unless they had some really extremely unique feature.
I think I understand the certainty, because when you are, it's kind of a defense mechanism, because when you are not certain of something and you go up against somebody who has sort of arrogant bravado about their version of events, then there's a tendency to sort of back down and say, oh, well, he seems pretty sure of himself. Maybe it did happen this way. And some people just have this defense mechanism, like, let's say, for example, we're sure that there's weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. We're so sure that we could tell you exactly where they are if you'll just give us a chance to go over there and show you.
Yeah, hypothetical weapons.
Arrogant certainty. Right there.
Anyway, guys, the book is called On Being Certain, and the author's name is Robert A. Burton, and I would recommend it if you want to check it out.
You're not the first person to recommend that book, so that might be worth a read.
It's about the neurological basis of the feeling of knowing, and about certainty and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you for the recommendation.
Love the show, guys.
Thanks.
Keep up the good work. Bye.